Well, welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. I am Eric Miskell with EMS Now, and it's my pleasure today to speak with Jeremy Griner. Jeremy is the managing director with ICAPE USA. And Jeremy, welcome. My first time to speak with you. So been looking forward to this because of what ICAPE does and the services you provide to the market. So let's begin by allowing you to introduce yourself and what your role within ICAPE is.
Perfect. No, thank you. First off, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. Also excited to speak with you. Like you said, my name is Jeremy Griner. I am the managing director at ICAPE USA. Born and raised right here in Indiana, where our North American headquarters is located. I graduated from Indiana University with a business degree. I have worked in the manufacturing industry since then, so for about 15 years. And, specifically for the last 5 years, I have worked in the PCB industry.
Perfect. Which brings us to my next question, which has to do with ICAPE. ICAPE Group obviously is in the PCB industry. Why don't you give us an overview of what exactly ICAPE Group offers?
Sure. So ICAPE Group is a global manufacturer and supplier of printed circuit boards and electromechanical parts. We've got factories strategically located around the world to support any technology, any volume, and any lead time. We've got offices in North and South America, Europe and Asia, even Africa. This is really to provide our customers with local support for their business, engineering, and warehousing needs. Just to kind of give you a scope of how large ICAPE is, we deliver over 21 million printed circuit boards and 6 million electromechanical parts each month. I think what makes us unique compared to most suppliers in this industry is that we're not just a supplier, but we're also a manufacturer. So we've got 2 quick turn factories, one in Sweden and then one in South Africa. And then we also own another factory in France that will manufacture, keyboards, which supports our SIPEM division.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
And now, regarding the local support, you've also recently done some acquisitions here in the United States. So what exactly did those add to the group?
Yeah, no, I'm actually glad you brought that up. So ICAPE recently acquired 3 companies. The idea, for that specifically is really to strengthen our local support. Ultimately, our end goal is to be a service provider and adding more offices that really broadens our scope here in the US and it just moves us closer to our customers. And so we can better serve our clients. And then we can also, reach new customer segments, which is important for us as well.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And I think you said previously that there wasn't very little overlap with the customer base on those, right?
Correct. Our M&A team did an excellent job with the companies they found. There were probably, out of all of the customers that the companies we acquired had, there was really only 2 customers of overlap. And so it was pretty impressive and really makes my job and my sales team's job a lot easier.
Okay, good. Well, I wanted to get into kind of the current state of the PCB market, but
sure.
And we will kind of writ large. But one of the real particular trends that seems to be very hot these days is the whole diversification of supply base, right? And that's related to the related move to shift manufacturing kind of closer to end markets, right? And that might be behind some of what you've been talking about here in the global footprint. And one of those really obviously has to do with China, right? And with the geopolitical stuff going on, what are you seeing?
Great question. There are a lot of elements that play into this. To the point that you made, the geopolitical issues is certainly one of them. I think COVID also really highlighted some of the disruptions in the supply chain. What happens if, factories in China were to shut down? And so what I'm seeing in the market and what I'm seeing, specifically, with the larger customers, that we support is they all have a strategic initiative to outsource a specific percentage of their PCB spend outside of China. And so whether that's bringing it back here to the US or a combination of to the US, or also, for example, ICAPE's done an excellent job of, supporting this strategy of, adding factories, and partnerships in South Korea, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan. Like I said, we actually own a factory in South Africa. And so we're really trying to be that source for our customers, that if they want it made in China, we can obviously do that. That's where we have, we've had a lot of success doing that. But for customers looking to mitigate that risk and just make sure that, hey, if something does happen, whether it's another pandemic or if it's some type of conflict, that they've got a supplier base that can support their electronic needs, whether that's printed circuit boards or electromechanical components, that is outside of China. And so companies, it's very interesting to kind of see how the strategies are different, but also very similar. What most companies are doing is anywhere from 25 to 40% of their PCB spend, they're looking to source outside of China. So that if there is a wider issue, they've got suppliers and resources that can support that demand.
Yeah, and now do you see that being related to any specific industries? Because I know that, for example, military electronics in the United States, you have to source, within the United States, the boards. So is that writ large, as you're seeing that people coming out of Asia? Is that in any particular sectors?
I know a lot of automotive companies are certainly look to do it, but really, from my perspective, most customers are looking to do it, especially, the larger companies who source a lot of printed circuit boards, a lot of, electromechanical parts. And so I wouldn't say it's specific to any industry. I think most companies, after the pandemic and just what's happening in today's world, they see a need to make sure that they have a backup plan in case things go wrong again. They want to really reduce, the impact to their supply chain. And the only way to do that is to have more partners around the globe and more partners, locally as well. And I think ICAPE, obviously, I'm going to toot ICAPE's horn here, I think ICAPE's done a great job. We can support you locally, we can support you globally, whether that's in China or outside of China.
Yeah, and it's interesting you point to the pandemic, and that was obviously a wake-up call for a lot of areas in the industry. And what we saw out of that too is, here in the United States, the movement to try to grow the manufacturing base for the Printed Circuit Board Association of America kind of rose up from that and is doing what they're doing, and I'm sure you're aware of that. And then also I see similar movement in Europe now as well, trying to, with that whole kind of supply chain resiliency that they talk about, right, and securing. So.
Yep. I know our procurement team is working very, very hard to just make sure we have strong, relationships, with factories in Europe, in other parts of Asia, and then, here, domestically in North and South America as well.
And so does that sourcing diversification just become kind of, that's the new table stakes? That's what's required in the industry now. And so,
yes.
What are the advantages that you see that offers to businesses?
I mean, I think the main thing is it offers, it mitigates the risk, number one. They've got a backup plan, or they've got a dual source plan. And so it really just allows, companies to have more flexibility. They are not, dependent on one part of the world. And so more so than anything, it provides them, security, and allows them really to mitigate the risk, by having a strong strategy in place, but also not just having the strategy, but implementing it as well.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I know that earlier this year, actually, I interviewed an OEM here in the United States who had invested and built their own PCB fab, right? And and not to sell to anybody else, just for their own base. And it was clearly for risk mitigation and controlling that and ensuring that the continuity of supply base. So
yep. it really is all about mitigating the risk, so securing your supply chain, and just making sure that you've got processes and partnerships in place so that if the worst does happen, you can still deliver product to your customers.
Yeah, exactly. So how would you characterize kind of the current state of the overall PCB market, both US and globally? Is it healthy? Is it suffering? How do you see it?
It was really, really healthy, up until probably the start of this year. Things started to slow down. And a lot of that has to do with, obviously, when there's a chip shortage, when there's a component shortage, there's not as much need for, printed circuit boards. It also has to do a lot with the fact that during the pandemic, companies, I don't want to say panicked because that's not the right word, but the lead times were so long. There was a shortage, on the raw material. And so these companies wanted to make sure that they had enough inventory to support their customers' needs. And so essentially what happened is, they overbought, they've got boards sitting in inventory. And so it just slows down the needs, in 2023. And so we've just seen, outside of, the military sector, we've just seen it slow down a bit. We do anticipate that to improve. It'll continue to get better as as we get further away from COVID, as the component, shortage situation improves. And then, as the economy starts to bounce back a little bit, and what we're seeing just, kind of just to expand upon that as well is like, the cost of, raw materials is down. The cost of freight is down compared to the days of, the pandemic. And so what does that do? That reduces the price of the overall printed circuit boards. And so right now, even though the demand may be lower, it's a really good time, to buy because you're getting better prices. Things that cost more a year or two ago are certainly cheaper. And so I would really encourage, customers to, talk to their suppliers, talk to their manufacturers, and kind of do a sanity check on pricing to make sure that they're taking advantage of the current market and the lower material cost and the lower freight.
Yeah. It's interesting what you're talking there made me think that, one of the issues that people talk about is that caused a lot of the problems in they called the chip shortage and all the problems was all this increased demand as well of new products being brought to market. So I'm wondering from that perspective, within the PCB industry, are we still seeing a lot of the traditional boards? Are you seeing a lot more flex boards? I know ceramic boards are certainly a thing in some sectors, and that people tout the benefits of that. Can you comment on any kind of trends in that sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like, here in North America, we're seeing, a PCB production growth of about 4%. And again, that's primarily driven, by the military and the industrial sectors, which impacts, flex boards and HDI boards and multi-layered boards. For those who don't know what HDI stands for, it's high density interconnect. And so those are the boards that I would say, the higher technology, anytime you're talking about, automotive, the push for, electrical vehicles in the military sector, you're just talking about a higher technology board, which again impacts the flex, the HDI, and then the multi-layer bare boards.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting, because I try to keep, I'm not very technical, but I do try to keep an eye on kind of the trends that are happening there, because and also obviously the density of the boards and the space on the boards is at a premium, right? It's everything with miniaturization and everything.
Yep. And
that poses challenges obviously as well. So, and I'd imagine it also limits which manufacturers you can take that to.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So,
but again, that's also what ICAPE does a good job of. I mean, we've got over 50, suppliers that we've got long-term, relationships with. And so with the single point of contact, you've got access to, really, a resource that can again support, any technology level, whether it's flex, HDI, or multi-layers. And so that's really what we pride ourselves on, is being, that one, that single, I hate saying this, but it's just a true. We're kind of like your one-stop shop. You've got a single point of contact that gives you access to any technology, any volume, any lead time, whether it's, production, quantities, or a small, prototype batch. And so, that's what I'm here to do, right? Is talk about ICAPE and how we can help. And I think, given the different, technology needs, given where the market is going, I really think ICAPE can be a great resource for a number of customers out there.
That makes me wonder too, when a customer comes to you and engages, is the board already, or the board design is already set, or do you also then consult with them on possible, ways to improve efficiencies, and based on, you're seeing all types of boards, right? And somebody's coming with a particular need. I would imagine the collective knowledge there is something that you can bring to bear for the benefit of your customers.
That is a great question. I'm actually glad you brought that up. In most cases, our customer, has designed the boards, they've selected the material, they've done, all of the things. They send us, packaged files to quote. But there are some very unique circumstances where, we partner with our customers, and then we use our engineering team and their experience and their expertise in this industry to, to kind of help the customer, figure out what's the best stack up, what's the best material, for cost purposes, but also most importantly, what's the best way to make sure that we can actually manufacture this board. Let's not design something that can't be manufactured. That doesn't help anybody. And so our engineers, with their 30+ years of experience in this industry, we do have a lot of situations where we partner with the end customer and help them during the design phase, and then walk them through all the way from the prototype to the mass production.
Gotcha. So people who are seeing this interview and say, this sounds interesting, what's the best way to reach out and engage with you or ICAPE in general?
Yeah, so obviously if you go to our website, icapegroup.com, there's a number of ways it can there's a link, that you can click that will send your information to my sales team, and then they can certainly reach out to you guys. I'm happy to give out my contact information as well. You can message me directly, Jeremy.Griner at ICAPE USA. I'd be happy to, take your information, pass it on to my sales rep and the local team, that can support you. And, whether you're, in the Southeast, the Northwest, we've got a team and a local point of contact there that can support you.
Excellent. And of course, there's always LinkedIn. If you didn't catch all that, you can find Jeremy on LinkedIn. And excellent. Well, Jeremy, this was very informative. I certainly appreciate the time, and I hope we can do this again moving forward, because it's obviously kind of a volatile time in our industry and in the world writ large, right? So I think staying up on the trends and what's developing is important, and you're clearly quite informed on what's happening within this sector. So I thank you for the time and hope we can do it again, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you.